Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxer Report. Another show. Regular shows like post-fight shows been very busy over the past week. This may be what, fourth episode and technically less than a week. So yeah, doing a lot. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel from the Inspirer, Jacob from Jab Hook. What's going on, fellas?
Good evening.
How's it going?
What's going on? As I always say to begin the show, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast and blog discussing all things boxing. Whenever boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the best place to go. P4P is the link. Links to our pages and channels on G+, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. Also links to where to listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Player FM, Stitcher Radio, and Mixcloud. That being said, let's get the show started. Late Saturday night, we did a live post-fight kind of spur-of-the-moment thing discussing Terence Crawford's destruction, his annihilation of Julius Indongo. Took him out in 3. Going to talk about that again right now. Having a couple of days to really digest what we saw. I'll go to you, Jacob, since you were not a part of that live show late Saturday night. I'll give you the time here to give your analysis, your breakdown of what you saw with Bud just taking apart Indongo.
Yeah, it was a historic and sensational win. I think most people were picking Crawford, but a lot of people, I think, thought it would be an interesting fight because there was a lot of like unknowns about Indongo, and I think I don't think this means Indongo is not a good fighter. I just think that it means that Crawford is that much better than that division. But yeah, I mean, Indongo looked very nervous and kind of off balance. His overhand punch was very slow. You could see it coming a mile away, and Crawford was able to time him. And Crawford, because he can go in both stances, he came out as a southpaw and he seems so focused, and I had said it on the earlier show, he's so cerebral. I feel like he's looking at every little thing and seeing where he can get the advantage. And he hit Indongo with that, first he knocked him down in the second round with that, with the punch kind of a little bit behind the ear, and Indongo just looked a little shook. And then, and Crawford was smart. He didn't just go after him kind of wild and risk getting countered. But then in that third round, when he hit him with that body shot, I mean, it was beautiful. And, to speak, using Gals here, but I'm with her. Like, it's one thing to knock someone out, but it's another thing to do with the body shot, especially in that kind of level of a fight and at that event. So, I mean, it was really good, just something of beauty to watch. I've probably watched that thing about 100 times. He hit him just clean in the body, and I think the motion of Indongo coming forward with, Bud throwing that punch to the body, I mean, you could just tell it was all over for Indongo. And some people might say that he has a soft body or whatever, but it was a hard punch, and it was in a good spot. Like, I mean, if you've been hit in the body, it hurts a lot, and sometimes you can't get up. Ironically, Hopkins, when he beat De La Hoya, it was with a body shot also.
Yeah, indeed. When he unified all the belts in 2004 at middleweight, I'll go to you, Daniel. You were part of the post-fight show late Saturday night, having a couple of days to digest what you saw, and I'm sure watched the fight over once, if not many times. Your thoughts now on the fight?
It's a lot of the initial thoughts that I had were solidified, particularly about Indongo just being an unknown. He was such an unknown, unfortunately, that you could have blitzed through what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. And apparently now one of his weaknesses is he does get hit to the body. Doesn't mean, like Jacob said, doesn't mean that he's not a good fighter. There's a pretty decent amount of good fighters that don't like to take body shots. I like to point out to Misu and Keith Thurman, for example. But it does show that as far as skills and as far as being an in-ring technician, Bud is the class of that division. By none. He's pretty much dealt with almost every style that you can think of in that division. And he's handled it pretty cleanly. He handled a pure boxer imposto to become a two-belt champion and did it so in such a way that people were accusing him of running when he basically took away Posto's biggest strength. And it just with Indongo, he was able to measure the one thing I noticed. And this is, I'll give a credit to a guy called Real TV that was in EJ Boxing Live's hangout at the fight. Indongo was trying to step a bit too wide, to overstep in a way, trying to overuse his height and reach advantage. What I mean is, like, his stance was wide and his bounces were much wider than what you would like a guy his height to do. Because unfortunately, yes, you're trying to make sure that your opponent can measure you correctly. But unfortunately, like Jacob mentioned, it also forces you to really throw your shots at a distance where it could be very, very ineffective. And it was true, like the overhand left that Indongo tried to throw, a lot of times those were seen a mile away because he was too far away to actually land it effectively. And you got to give full credit to Bud in that sense. Like I said, we have to mention again, this is probably the second fight in this many where didn't even bother with the orthodox stance, went straight southpaw. And effectively, like I said, it was an effective takeout, real good body punch. And it wasn't even like a left hook to the liver. It was a punch right through the gut, to the sternum. It proved, like I said, it proved effective. It proved a certain level of aggression that Bud had, where it didn't feel like it needed to be something like where he needed motivation to get angry about it. It was mainly like he measured the opponent and he calmly took him apart. And Bud looks even better 2 days from now. And given we're probably going to talk about later, let's not discredit Indongo either. Indongo pulled off prior to this fight things that you rarely see in a fighter. Go into another country, especially a country like Russia, where you know the odds are pretty stacked against you. Knock out Troyanowski. Go to another place, Scotland, where you've known that the guy in Ricky Burns has been given gift decisions, and make it such a mismatch that there was no way they could justify a gift decision to Burns. Like you have to give credit to Indongo. Like he went into the belly of the beast. He didn't win, but very few fighters nowadays are willing to do that. Go to the belly of the beast with something that was as meaningful as this. Something that I know we're talking about later. Something that hopefully stays in place at least until the end of the year.
Yeah.
Just to speak on that real fast, what it shows me is that Indongo has a really good character. that he's willing to in order to test himself and prove that give him the chance to be the best, he's willing to go wherever the fights are, and whether they're here or there, and become that road warrior. And he didn't win this fight, but he was willing to do it, which is more than I can say for a lot of people that kind of stay in their comfort zone and never really leave that to get to that next level.
Yeah, when we did the live show, I want to harken back to something Winnie Boxing said, who was on the show with us. He said, essentially talking about controlling the narrative, and that because in the aftermath, you heard folks talk about this fight and suggest that Indongo was a bum, he was nothing. Terence Crawford just beat an easy fighter, and to your point, Daniel, this is a guy who, in back-to-back fights, basically won 2 world belts on the road. The problem with that analysis of those who are just automatically trying to dismiss this victory or downplay the accomplishment of Crawford is they're not allowing space for the fact that you can be in a situation where you're actually a good fighter. You're actually a very good fighter, but there are levels here. And it could just be a simple case of you being a good fighter, but you're losing to arguably a great fighter. If we had any doubts about how good Terence Crawford is, he showed it, not just by winning, but by winning with such ease. Dare I say that Crawford is going or has already arrived from the point of just being a good fighter to just being legit great right now. He's in his prime, and there's nothing wrong. It doesn't necessarily speak negatively on Indongo, the fact that he lost in this way. To the contrary, it could very well speak to how damn good Bud Crawford is right now. He is that good, ladies and gentlemen. I see Joe and Francis from Fort Boxing News has joined us. Unmute your mics, folks. We're talking Bud Crawford's stoppage over Julius Indongo. I'll give you the opportunity now to talk about what you saw. Were you not surprised that he won, but were you surprised at the level, at the ease of how he won and how he basically destroyed this dude? He bodied him.
Oh, certainly. I was definitely surprised at how quickly the fight ended. Crawford looked phenomenal in there. There were so many things that he did impressively. It was as though he had just the perfect placement of his punches, and he was timing Indongo's straight left hand. He would slip it really easily and then come in with some big punches of his own. What I didn't realize is how lanky Indongo would be. He had an incredibly long reach, and while I think he had possibly an effective game plan coming in there, trying to keep Crawford at the end of his punches, I just think he couldn't execute it well against a more talented, a swifter, a more crafty fighter like Crawford. And I think that was the perfect game plan for him, was just to keep Crawford at the end of his punches, move around, use that reach. But Crawford is so resilient and he adjusts so easily to his opponent that I think Indongo just wasn't on Crawford's level. So I wasn't surprised that Crawford won, but I am surprised as to how quickly it ended.
Yeah, great win for Crawford. History right there, winning all 4 belts. And I love the way that Crawford, he does it on ESPN, a lot of people watching. I love the way Crawford, when he figures somebody out, he puts them away. He doesn't play with them. He goes right after them and, took out Indongo. And I give Indongo credit because, man, he went on one heck of a run going into Russia, knocking out Troyovsky, going into Wales, winning a title over there over Ricky Burns, and then being willing to come to the United States and go into Crawford's hometown to fight. I give Indongo credit, but Crawford just proved that he was just on another level. And hey, good for him. Fantastic win.
Actually, joining us for the first time, I believe, on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Brother Zaire from Next Gen Gaming. He talks gaming, but he also talks boxing, a former amateur fighter himself, at, I believe, over 100 amateur fights himself. First of all, thanks for joining us on the show. We're talking,
No problem.
talking on Bud Crawford, his win over Indongo. You didn't see the fight Saturday night. I shared you the
live. I didn't see it live, but I watched the replay of it.
Yeah. I'll just give you an opportunity right now to talk about it after you saw the bout.
Oh well, I guess like I said, leading up to the fight, rather. I only gave Indongo a puncher's chance. Bud doesn't have the best chin rumors around town. They said, what's his name? Gary Russell was supposed to knock him out one time in the amateurs in the hotel. He got into a little fight. But besides that, I like Crawford. You know what I mean? I like what I like best about Crawford. I like the mean streak that he has in him. I know as far as boxing was, like I said, if Indongo didn't get an insight and made it rough for Crawford, you know what I mean, to make him say quote unquote gun shy, that he wasn't going to win the fight, and that body shot, my God, that was heard around the world. I don't know if he broke something or not, but that was a hard body shot. But he had heard him the round previously. That was, I believe, I think it was the left hand behind the ear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I raised the question now: is Crawford a weight bully? You know what I mean? I know he called out Keith Thurman at the end of the fight, but I don't know about that. But you know what I mean? He may just be too good, too big for that weight class. I don't see nobody beating him down there.
Two questions kind of were posed after the fight, kind of came out of this fight. One, when will Crawford, to your point about him maybe being a weight bully, when will Bud move up to 147 to tangle with the top welters in the world? Two, is Terence Crawford right now, giving off of what he just did, what he just accomplished, history making, if you will, undisputed unified champion in the division? Is he now, and I'll just ask this for everybody, whoever wants to chime in, please do. Is Crawford now #1 pound for pound? They was talking about in the post-fight, Teddy, Andre Ward, Bud said in the post-fight interview, he said Andre Ward is due, but he think this win and how he did it may have supplanted Ward. Teddy Atlas he's still holding on to he still believes that Lomachenko is #1. So first off, I'll just ask for everybody here who wants to chime in.
Well, I'll go first. I'm sorry.
Can it be considered right now? Can it be considered? Can Bud be considered #1 pound?
I question Teddy Atlas' list. The reason why I say that, because word around town again, for boxing to be a big global sport, it's very, very small inner circles. I mean, word travels from gym to gym. But word around town is that Teddy had a Rigondeaux at #5. Because if you look at the list, and someone sent me something today, that he had Errol Spence at #5, but with the Cuban flag. Now, as far as Crawford, I guess he had Lomachenko as #1. I can't put somebody with 9 fights with 1 loss at #1. I understand he's a great fighter. I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? I would like to see again him betterly tested. I don't even know if Rigondeaux would be that tested, because again, Rigondeaux is moving up 2 weight classes. But I say that to say this: as far as Crawford being #1, no, Andre Ward is #1. You know what I mean? Andre Ward has cleaned out 2 divisions. Whether he wasn't, like I said, fully undisputed at 168 because he wouldn't get into the Super 8. You know what I mean? He wouldn't join the thing. But then Crawford would end up knocking him off. You still have to give it to Andre Ward. You know what I mean? Just by the name of opponents that he's fought, and he's beaten Sergey 2 times. He has fought, to me, like I said, the better opposition than Terence. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion.
I just posed a question for everybody else. Is Bud right now #1? Is it still Andre Ward, or do you have someone else?
For me, I have Ward as #1, and Terence Crawford as #2. The reason, it's kind of stated before, but for me, when I had the pound for pound rankings, Crawford was on there at a lower position. But Ward, I had as at one time I had him at #3, and I had Kovalev at #2. Now, when a #3, and again, this is just my rankings, when a #3 beats a #2, even though I thought Kovalev won that first fight, a win's a win. It's in the W column, and then he beats him again. to me, if you're beating somebody that's ranked in the pound for pound, especially that high up for me and a lot of other people had him, I think at least in the top 5, you got to give him credit for that. Has Crawford beat, good people? Yes, but Indongo and, pretty much everybody on his list, none of them were in most people's pound for pound. So I'm not trying to discredit what Crawford did, but at the same time, I'm trying to, if you're beating somebody that most people have ranked high, then that's got to get a little bit of extra there, in my opinion.
Francis and Joe, and then Daniel.
I agree with everyone else as far as Andre Ward being number 1. Crawford's got a really good argument for number 2, though, because unify the division, making history, and the way he's dominated the division. I mean, he's taken out everybody, and it's the same formula. He first 2 rounds, he studies them, and then once he figures you out, he takes you out. And Crawford, the way he's dominated, I think I would put him behind Andre Ward as number 2. Lomachenko, as good as and talented he is, he hasn't had that many fights. And then even with Triple G, he's shown some chinks in his armor recently. Crawford, the one thing he hasn't really had is a rival. Like with Andre Ward,
good point.
He had Kovalev as a rival, and that helped elevate Andre Ward to the number 1 position. So maybe Crawford, maybe he moves up to 147 and he finds that rival. But he's been so dominant at 140.
Yeah, I have to agree, Joe. I think that when Crawford does move up to 147, there are going to be a lot of rivals waiting for him there, because there's just a variety of fighters with a variety of different technical skill, probably already eyeing him, looking forward to him moving up to 147. Personally, I would like to see him face, Errol Spence or, Danny Garcia or Keith Thurman, Sean Porter. I mean, those are all very tough opponents. And I think Crawford, he'll be able to figure them out just the way that he did this past weekend. But I'd be more interested in seeing how he performs at 147, because I think that's where the really challenging opponents lie.
Daniel?
The way I say it, the way I look at it, and it hasn't changed my view from 2 nights before, because I know you asked this question. Yeah, Bud did something historic. We haven't seen it since, at least with the 4 belts, since Jermaine Taylor. Now, we know there's been big undisputed champions before, like we mentioned B-Hop, we mentioned Tyson, we mentioned Monzon. The thing with this one is, like I said, this one hasn't been done in a while, in an era where everybody tries to protect their corners at times. Now, as good as that is, I will say this again as the reason why I'll keep Ward number 1 probably for a little bit. Andre Ward has not lost since he was a teenager. No matter what obstacles or what opponent he's come in the boxing ring, he's been able to prevail. And not only prevail, but in many times, in many instances, up to recently with the Kovalev fight, really outclassed the guy when it comes to skill. And that has to count for, that has to really count for something, particularly when in this last 2 fights, he beat a guy that some people could argue would have been number 2 on many people's pound for pound list in Kovalev. And that is probably going to hold Andre Ward number 1 for a while, depending on what Bud does next. That's the key word. Depending on what Bud does next.
And we're going to talk about that shortly. I see Scorsese has joined us. You were also with me on the kind of post-fight show. We just did it, you know, just spur of the moment thing. Having a couple of days to really sit back. Your thoughts of the fight now, having a couple of days to sit back, as well as having a brief discussion about where does Buddy Crawford rank now among the kind of mythical pound-for-pound rankings. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I got some pushback on my pound for pound list, and I always do because I mean they call me a fanboy for it, but I got Adonis Stevenson like #1, Ward and Crawford at 2 and 3. That's sort of my list. Not really Crawford even 3, but after the performance and getting all those titles, I actually got Badou Jack I think at 3rd in my list. But my
Not
list
after what we just saw.
yeah. I mean, but Bud Crawford's nice, like so. I mean, to me, it's just like I knew the opponent. Even the odds said the opponent wasn't going to stack up, and I don't want to take nothing away from him because there's some fighters out there that you know the odds will tell you this fighter's dominant. But if you say, you know what, if I stack him against this style right here, I really think this style will kick his butt in his own division. To me, it ain't nothing in Bud's division. You can create any fighter, make them a real 140 pounder, and it's really nobody that I just see I feel like can wipe him out or destroy him. So I got a lot of respect for the way Terence Crawford has shown he could work the body, he could switch stances. I'm not really sure the complete inside game if he had to go there all day. I'm not sure, but boxing don't always require that, and you know he's nasty with it. So I feel like he showed more in his last fight than Andre Ward showed in his last fight. But I do understand some people like the resume argument, the longevity argument. That's fine. But as boxing gets younger, I think we got to stop looking at the resume and start looking at, hey, it's some new pound for pound stars coming in here, and they're showing I'm gonna build that resume. I'll get that one day, but today I'm just a skilled being, and some stay old and they continue to be super skilled beings and they never lose a step. And you know I think that's the ultimate saying of a fighter. Almost you grow with age, and that's why I would have Adonis up there. Like Adonis hasn't changed anything from what he was, and he's doing it with age. So that's crazy to me. So if Crawford is let's say he can continue to do this at 36, I think Ward's regressed some at 34. He's not the same guy. I just had an Andre Ward fan telling me that. So, you know, like I don't want to just take a crap on nobody, but look, it's like top 5 in the world of boxers. Being one, I guess you could say it's the ultimate goal, but ain't no shame in being on anybody's top 5. That's just what it is.
The second question that's been posed after this bout is when is Terence Crawford moving up to 47? He was asked about it after the fight again with Teddy, and Crawford basically intimated, "You'll see me soon." I can't remember, was Christina Pancher? I can't remember the lady he was interviewing. I think Sunday, either Sunday or today, in which he basically said that he's going to move up to 47. That this is his last fight. I'll go to you, Zaire, and then you, Francis and Joe.
All right.
How soon do you anticipate Crawford not only moving up to 147? And let me finish right quick. And he's going to face tougher competition. Who do you think is his most dangerous foe? I have my opinion. I think it's Errol Spence. I think not only would he give him his toughest bout, I think he beat him at this point. But some may say Thurman. Some may say someone else like a Porter. Throw Danny Garcia out. I'm sorry. But to the point of Crawford, how do you see him vis-a-vis the welterweight division?
Again, I skill-wise, he's top-notch. You know what I mean? And I do think he's kind of a, I don't know, maybe we'll say a weight bully or whatever. He's strong at 140. I'm just looking at his frame. I don't see him beating any of the top welterweights. And the reason why I say that is because, again, there have been questions about his chin. Just some little things that I've heard, him being knocked down, sparring, being, put out, actually having his lights cut off. You know what I mean? Look at, little Gamboa, you know what I mean? The lowest he was, he kind of hurt him. I don't see him, and I'm not saying that Keith Thurman or a lot of those guys are better than him skill-wise, you know what I mean? But I haven't seen, we haven't seen Terence more or less on the move, like, you know what I mean, boxing and having to stay away. He more or less, he sits there and counter and he pushes forward. You know what I mean? I don't even know if he has that in his repertoire. Because he hasn't, you know, and again, he might have a lot of tools in the chest that he may have had to use. You know what I mean? He moved a lot when he fought the slow foot guy. What's his name? The Adrian Border fought too. They got knocked out by DeMarco in the first round.
Molina,
you know what I mean? He moved a lot in that fight. You know what I mean? But again, he's that guy there was very, very slow on his feet. And to answer your question, believe it or not, about, you know, Danny Garcia, it was crazy, right? I'm not a huge Danny Garcia fan, but it seems like he doesn't do anything great. You know what I mean? That just, you know, shines. But he wins, you know what I mean? For whatever reason, I mean, he got a left hook from hell, you know what I mean? And what Danny does have is good timing, you know what I mean? He doesn't have the fastest hands or the quickest feet, but what he does have is he has, you know, what beat speed is timing. He has.
I don't see it.
I'm listening.
I just don't see
I think he split the amateurs.
They
split the amateurs. I think Danny won one and he won one, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, he hit him with them chin with them 8-ounce gloves with that left hook, you know what I mean? You know, it's good night, Irene. Now, again, I don't see him beating Errol Spence either. You know, Errol was just too rough inside. You know what I mean? Errol was tough. If you look what he did to Kell Porter, and again, I'm sorry, Kell Brook, he wasn't winning the fight, more or less. It was more or less, we never seen Errol have that much resistance, didn't really have his way. You know what I mean? Kell Brook put up a hell of a fight, you know what I mean? But it was just that tenacity, that body work, you know what I mean? I don't know if, again, if, like I said, Crawford, if his frame, you know what I mean, if he's big enough for that weight class. I don't, especially like somebody like Sean Porter. You know, cause I do not like the way Porter fight. I think he needs to be suspended. That guy's a brawl, a mauler. You know what I mean? But I don't know if he can take that type of pressure. I don't know. I don't think so. That's my honest opinion. You can prove me wrong. I just don't think so. You know.
Francis and Joe for boxing. What do you think?
I think Crawford probably going to have to move up to welterweight soon. I know he has a hard time making 140, and if maybe if a guy like Mikey Garcia agrees to fight at 140, Crawford stays there and does a fight with Garcia. But other than that, Crawford's really cleaned out that division, and he's just running out of opponents. And if he moves up to 147, Top Rank's got welterweights they could throw him in there with, and then a couple test fights at 147, and maybe try to make a fight with Spence, which I think Spence would be a really tough matchup for Crawford. I think Spence is a little too big, a little too strong, and Spence can match up with technique-wise and skill-wise. But I think a guy like Danny Garcia, I think Crawford matches up real well with Danny Garcia. With Keith Thurman, I think Crawford matches up real well with Keith Thurman. The one guy who I think might give Crawford a little trouble is Sean Porter, because of his power and the way that he can be so aggressive at times. But we've seen Porter outbox, so I think the Porter-Crawford matchup would be interesting for me. But Crawford's got options if he goes up to 147.
I talked about how Zaire, how he's had amateur fights, years of in the ring experience. So have you, Francis. Given your knowledge, being in the ring, you still fight, you still spar. Mm-hmm. When you look at Crawford and the way he fights, how he fights, not just when do you think Crawford will move up, but again, as I asked Zaire and Joe, who do you think he will be his toughest opponent at 147 pounds?
I actually read that Crawford was going to be ringside for the Pacquiao-Horn fight, and he'd like to face the winner of Pacquiao-Horn at 147. So obviously that fight would be next year because Pacquiao usually fights in April and November. I would actually like to see Crawford face Mikey Garcia. I know that that's probably going to be a difficult fight to make just because Garcia has that bad blood with Bob Arum and Top Rank. But I still think that would be a very intriguing fight. But at 147, I think Crawford's toughest fight would be against Errol Spence. He is also a southpaw, but he seems to be faster and more resilient, has more explosive power, and he might be a better counterpuncher. But speed isn't always everything. Crawford's very good at figuring people out, and he might be the person to crack the code with Errol Spence. But I think a good matchup for Crawford would definitely be Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia. I think those would be great matchups for him. Sean Porter is imposing. I think he has a very imposing, aggressive style, but we've seen Crawford take on aggressive opponents before, and sometimes when fighters are aggressive and imposing, it doesn't really necessarily mean that they're going to take down the slower, less aggressive counterpuncher. That sometimes that just doesn't happen. I think Crawford would be able to get his way with Porter, but at this point, I think that his most difficult opponent at 147 would definitely be Errol Spence.
Jacob and Scorsese, and then finally you, Daniel.
I actually think that I can't remember. It was on another show, but I wanted to see that Mikey Garcia Crawford fight. I think it's an interesting fight. I think Garcia has skills, and I think he outgrew his division. So the problem is, and I think Daniel had mentioned this on your guys' special show, that because Mikey Garcia was with Top Rank, I believe, and then they had all those, the contract dispute, and it kept them out for a long time. It's kind of like, well, how are they going to make that fight if, because of that? The other problem is most of the other people at 147 are, with other organizations that are promoters that maybe, they don't play nice with. But, I actually think Crawford could beat Thurman now. I'm not saying Thurman is not a good fighter. I just don't think he's as good as, people think he is.
I agree. I think Thurman is too reckless, offense and defensively.
I think I've seen Thurman struggle, at times, and I haven't really seen Crawford struggle. And like I always say, he's a very cerebral fighter. And my new nickname for Crawford is the Buddy Snatcher. So Thurman wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
I think he beats Garcia. I just think Garcia is, I always call him the ultimate overachiever. I think he was able to get away with a lot. And, and now that he's lost, and, well, actual L versus, fights that he probably lost that he didn't get the L for. Sean Porter is an interesting matchup because he is a kind of come at you style, and we know he could take a hell of a punch, and, but the problem with Porter for me is that Crawford has so much skill, and Porter seems to, if he's not getting his way, and Crawford could keep his distance and keep him on the end of his punches, then he's probably going to beat Porter. But I think it'd be a tough fight. Spence, Spence is too big for Crawford. I don't even know if I'd want to see that fight, because I think that would be that could potentially ruin Crawford. It could be one of those fights where it really changes him. And I would hate to see that happen to Crawford, because I think he has a lot of talent, and, I'd rather see him in fights that are a little bit more competitive, not just something that he's going to potentially get, messed up for the rest of his career, because he's still young. I think he still has a lot to do. I don't know all the fights are up a weight class. He's cleaned out his division, and, I don't think, he's been alluding to that he's going to move up. So just what fights can he make there?
Scorsese and finally Daniel.
Speaking of moving up, he got the style to play with some of them, and I think the point was made to Porter, to Spence. I think Jeff Horn may have been left out. I was listening hard. I don't think, did I hear Jeff Horn?
Francis mentioned Jeff Horn.
See, I think those are tougher fights than, and I'm not saying they better fighters than Thurman or Garcia, but stylistically for Terence Crawford, from what I'm seeing, I agree with Zaire. I'm not sure if it gets overly tough. Does he have that game to stay there and shoulder up and stop using his legs so much if his legs go? Maybe he does. He's never showed me nothing to say he's going to punk out, but I just know those guys are bully-style fighters, and that's a question he's going to have to answer. And we did
Thurman a bully?
No, not Thurman. I'm talking about Horn. Speaking of Horn, Porter, and Spence. Thurman's finesse. Thurman's I want to say like a moving bomb thrower. I mean, if you made a video game character to describe his style, you just think of Streets of Rage. You'll think of a guy going up and down the screen.
He throws too many Hayukin punches.
Yeah, think of Streets of Rage going up and down the screen, and this guy would just be digging in his pocket, throwing grenades. So that's his character. That's what he would be. I don't like Thurman's jab compared to Spence's. I don't like Thurman's anything compared to Spence's at this point. I mean, if you know frames in boxing, Keith Thurman does that well. You know when I'm talking about frames, I'm saying you'll go here, you get there, and say if you get to the last frame down here, well, some people say it's the last frame, you're able to swoop your head around and get out. Keith Thurman does that well, but he does it after he's thrown some wild, crazy ass punches, and it's just like a balance of a swinging balance he got going on. It's just I don't like it, and like Daniel said, the buddy snatcher would be done. I mean, Jacob said the buddy snatcher be done took one of his ribs based on what we saw Bud do, and based on we seeing Thurman doing his damn track meets there in the ring after somebody tickled him to death with a body shot. But as far as Earl Spence, I definitely no. Jeff Horn, I kind of want to say no, but Jeff got a little more show to me. Sean Porter, I kind of want to say no to Crawford beating him at this point, but also I know Sean can get a little chinny, and I don't know if Crawford power gonna carry up. If it does, he could definitely ring Sean Bell, get some respect, and put a better jab on him than Sean normally sees from like Broners and Keith Thurman to keep him honest. But you know, I think they said he's going, so Pacquiao may get the decision, and they may go that route. Who knows? And I definitely think he beat Pacquiao at this point.
Yeah,
I've been saying that for 2 years. Your thoughts, Daniel?
As far as first, I'll say like I want him to make at least one defense of all 4 of those belts. You did all the work necessary to earn them, so you should at least defend it at least once. You do have a mandatory in the IBF from Sergey Lipnitz that should probably not pose any danger to Bud, so you could do a defense there, and then look to see what happens. And it looks to be the now back on rematch between Manny Pacquiao and Jeff Horn. Because unfortunately, because of the business issues, that's probably the only major fight you're going to get at 47. Because let's look at the situation as it stands.
Jesse Vargas.
The other fighters, not Jesse Vargas. The Boulder smoke him, but the main thing would be is we know Bob Arum. One of Bob Arum's master plans was to have Pacquiao be sacrificed to Terence Crawford at some point. This could be the fight to do it. Pacquiao wins a rematch, and then Bud says, "Okay, let's move up," and get sacrificed that way. But that Jesse Vargas is the top-ranked guy, so you could throw him in there. Bud will smoke him. And then almost everybody else of consequence, short of Lucas Matisse, is on the other side with Heyman. And unfortunately, that makes for very interesting fights. I especially would like to see the Keith Thurman fight, because I think Keith Thurman needs the right type of opponent that doesn't say, I'm just going to try to outbrawl you. You have to have an opponent that says, I'm going to have to outskill you and outbrawl you. And the way Bud can read adjustments, the way Bud can move, like say, between stances, that may actually be the fight that Keith Thurman needs to get back on track, because unfortunately, despite winning, he hasn't looked very good in a lot of the recent fights, at least for a guy that calls himself one-time Keith Thurman. Porter may be an interesting fight because Porter will smother. Porter will put pressure on Bud. But in many ways, it might be similar to Hank Lundy when he tried to do that to Bud. But it'd be a good fight to get, because we know Sean Porter, for all the pressure that he does have skill. he can't put combinations together when he needs to.
I'm gonna do something interesting here. Going to talk about the undercard here, but for those who saw a lot of the bouts in the undercard, I'm gonna give you the opportunity between, say, a Gvozdyk, Baker, Stevenson, Shakur Stevenson's bout, Dillian Whyte, Bryant Jennings fight. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to pick a specific fight on that undercard that you guys want to talk about, and then I may ask a follow-up question. So I'll go to you, Scorsese. Amongst those undercard bouts on that Crawford and Indongo card, which one was you more interested in? I'm giving you the opportunity to talk about it now. You got your mic muted.
Yeah, I was trying to get to a mouse wanted to play games with me. I really don't know, man. To be honest, I don't know. I caught Shakur. I caught Gvozdyk was the one I paid the most attention to because I wanted to, he's the closest to like the challenger. Well, he is a challenger. He's closest to a mandatory or a champion. So I guess that would be the one I could speak on more. But it was a dry bout. It was powder fresh. It was that dry, man. Um, Craig Baker, what I could say about him is, damn, surprisingly, the man got more technique than Yuneski Gonzalez. He kept his hands high. Yuneski was just throwing the fastball with no hands right down the pipe for Gvozdyk, and Gvozdyk just ate it up, like a brownie at night. But Baker didn't give him much to work with, and Gvozdyk didn't show that he had the key to just go open that door. When I see a high guard, I feel like you gotta, don't mind stepping in on it, smothering it. The guy don't have enough feet to go backwards on you. Go in there and hit him around the elbows, and then when he do snap backwards, make sure he try to catch that elbow shot. When he go backwards, put that jab on him as he go. Like it's more to the game than just using your range when you that kind of fighters. But I guess that's what his bread and butter is gonna be, him bouncing around, him giving lateral movement, him not being close to the opponent. But man, at the highest level, people cut that ring down. People know that just ain't gonna cut it. You're gonna have to stand at arm's length and have to be able to beat somebody. And I wasn't impressed. I'm just gonna be honest. I was not impressed. I think this goes back to what I said about Isaac Chilemba and Gvozdyk in that bout, where I thought Chilemba was getting off way more than Gvozdyk. I thought he was landing a lot of shots on Gvozdyk. I actually thought it was close, or Chilemba was winning up until the injury. Gvozdyk noticed that and he turned it on. That's credit to him. But if you look at the style, this style, it ain't nothing near Chilemba, but it's much closer than Chilemba than it is Gvozdyk. And I think the promoter knew he didn't look good against a fresh Chilemba, so they went to the Gonzalez style opponent, Reckless, and then they got back to this. And once again, he looked dry. He looked dry.
Joe and Francis, of the undercard bouts, of the bouts underneath of Crawford Indongo, which one would you had your focus on, I should say?
Probably the one that surprised me was Mike Alvarado scoring a highlight reel knockout. I know he's fighting a guy who's 40 years old, and journeyman is probably even more of a compliment to the guy, but it was a pretty vicious knockout, and I wasn't expecting that from Alvarado. I thought he was done years ago. So probably that one being on the undercard, Alvarado working his way back, trying to get back into the picture at 147. So that was probably the one that caught me by surprise, just because of the way that it was. I wasn't expecting a vicious knockout from Mike Alvarado. Francis actually had to end up stepping away, so she's not here to give her pick.
Okay, Jacob and then Daniel.
So just to speak real fast, I agree with Scorsese on what's his name, Gvozdyk or whatever. He wasn't impressive at all. And on Mike Alvarado, I mean, I think his decline was because he had so many personal issues. So he is starting to come back up. So surprising that, we were talking about him and Rios is, who was basically the stronger fighter of the two, is nowhere to be seen. But I'll talk about Jennings because I really like Bryant Jennings. I'm glad that he's with a promoter and that he's fighting now. His competition was nothing to scream about, but he did what he was supposed to do, which is knock him out in 2 rounds. He made quick work of him, didn't mess around. I hope Jennings gets a chance to fight higher level opponents. I think he has a lot of skill. I think when he ran into Ortiz, I don't think he was doing bad in that fight, but he got caught with a nice uppercut, and that was all she wrote. So, I think he can compete at that top level, and I hope to see more of him.
Daniel,
I was probably looking forward to most of the Shakur Stevenson fight on the undercard because I want to see how this kid progresses. He did really well. The opponent, Paz, didn't really put much real opposition as far as having him to adjust much, but he did look impressive. He did show that he does have a little bit of power in the left hand, and it showed the progression of a really, really young fighter. The kid's, like I said, the kid's probably not old enough to drink yet, and it's going to show to me that at least in that weight class, that he'll be a problem in a couple of years if he stays there. I'm pretty sure he will. He does. His body's still growing though, but it's a pretty decent performance. Good young kid, and we mentioned Top Rank does know how to build fighters, particularly Olympians. So this is just another example of Top Rank doing what they've been known to do.
Let's move on to some news here. Kind of news broke after the fight, during the post-fight show, courtesy of Dan Rayfield, ESPN. He got word that apparently negotiations are taking place for possible Vasyl Lomachenko, Guillermo Rigondeaux bout December 9th at MSG in New York. Shout out to Mike Money for telling us during the post-fight show. It looks like in a couple of days afterwards, all roads are leading to this bout happening. I'll go to you, Jacob. When this bout was proposed years ago, it was just that talk. Nothing ever really serious. Are you surprised that it looks like we may see this fight now?
I don't think we're going to see this fight. I know they're talking about it. I know that what was said was that Lomachenko is going to fight, or he has a fight, and that Rigondeaux was one of the names that was thrown in. But when you get to the negotiation table and Lomachenko is probably going to try to get everything in his favor, I think that's when the talks are going to break down, and we're not going to see this fight.
You think it will happen, or you think it will not happen, Daniel?
It's more leaning towards it probably will, because unfortunately, especially now when it comes to Lomachenko, his goal is try to unify titles. And looking at the division, there's not many options available. Okay, we know Burchell, WBC, his hand's broken. So he's out of it for a little bit. IBF, we know Tank's with the circus right now. And Corrales might wind up, because of the way that fight shaped up, might really just wind up rematching Castellanos. Random faces. So he does have very few options. And going to lightweight now, when I remember specifically, I forgot which interview it was, where he even said it because people asked him about how about try to make a fight with Manny Pacquiao at lightweight. He said, I have to wait 2 years for it because I have to get my body adjusted to lightweight. I have to spend 2 years just adjusting my body to lightweight. So we know moving up is a hard decision for him to make right now. So there's not a lot of fights out there other than Salido that make it really intangible. And we have to mention the location. I forgot which interview said it is, where Bob Arum said, given the options, if it was Rigondeaux or Salido, if it's Salido, we're having this fight in the West Coast. If it's Rigondeaux, we're having it in New York. And the reports, particularly from Mr. Rayfield, is New York. Now, there's always the chance, like Jacob mentioned, that Lomachenko might diva his way out of the fight. But ultimately, though, there's really not much you can do. Like you've already said, okay, lightweight's going to take me a while just for my body to adjust to it. And we have to measure, he's a pretty small junior lightweight. He probably could still make featherweight handily if he chooses to. So there's that aspect. And then there's the aspect of the fact that as much as we can talk about the weight classes, it is going to be a drastic jump for Rigondeaux. And Rigondeaux's a small. He's he's a small super bantamweight as it is. It's also a fight that you have the two best amateur fighters of their generation going head-to-head professionally. Their record,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Their record in the amateur cycle is obscene. I think they have over 800 victories and literally, I think, 15 or 16 losses between both of them. That's an obscene record. Even in the amateur ranks, combining two fighters like that. So I do personally think it's going to happen, but it's mainly because of location and because at the end of the day, like I said, Lomachenko really doesn't have that many options if he wants to remain active. And we also have to mention the Rigondeaux, he opened his mouth. He did what Canelo did before the fight to Floyd. Canelo said, I'll even go down to 152 to fight Floyd. Rigondeaux said, I'll go up to 130 to fight Lomachenko. It looks like Klimas and Bob Arum are just taking his word on it.
We talked about this quite a bit Saturday night, Sunday morning, Scorsese. Again, just like the Crawford thing. Having a couple of days to sit on this. Your thoughts on this proposed bout? Are you there, Scorsese? I think
he fell asleep on us.
Yeah, I don't think he is. So I go to you, Francis and Joe. It's been a while since you've been on here. When you heard about this rumor about taking place, what were your immediate thoughts?
I was like Jacob. I was skeptical. I figured it's big talk on social media or talking about it to the media, but when it came right down to it, I didn't think it would be. I don't know if they'll be able to make the fight, but honestly, as a fan, I'd really love to see it. Like Dan talked about, you're talking about guys with two extremely deep and decorated amateur backgrounds, and with Lomachenko, we've seen what he can do against guys who are athletic and tough. But Guillermo brings something that the other guys don't. Where Rigondeaux's a really, really skilled boxer and good defensively. He's tough to hit. So I think with Lomachenko, I would love to see that fight. I think it'd be interesting. I think it'd be more like a boxing chess match, and I really hope it happens. I'd be more excited about that than seeing a Salido rematch. I think Salido got Lomachenko on his best day, and I think Salido now is just older, and I just have a feeling that you know how that fight's going to go with Lomachenko now. I'd rather see Rigondeaux, skill versus skill, and I think it'd be interesting.
I see Scorsese is back. Again, as I was saying, we talked about this a lot in great detail when the rumors started popping off. Again, having a couple of days to just sit on this story. Your thoughts? Do you think it will happen?
Man, they smart. they played us again. Will it happen? I'm not ever giving Lomachenko and Bob Arum my benefit of the doubt. Like they full of shit together. They they black eyed peas and something else that don't go together. You put that together and you just got issues to me. It's been that way their whole career, so I'm not gonna start just saying, oh, they're gonna do right this time. No. They put two divisions between the guy. I was having this argument today. They said, well, Lomachenko is a bigger star now at 130, so now they're willing to pay Rigondeaux. Like, well, what the hell fight made him a huge star at 130? What opponent did they put in there for you to say, okay, this is the star-making fight and do it the right way? I call bullshit on that. I call they put two divisions between them, and now, like I always said, HBO or Top Rank or whoever was against Rigondeaux was going to do. That man was going to be brought in as an opponent, and he was going to be brought into a fight that they're gonna put everything against him. And I'm not talking about judges. I'm talking about he's the smaller man. He's the older man. He's the guy that ain't getting the fights when he wants to fight. He can barely get active. A lot of things. He's always being dictated to. Hey man, it just ain't a good look. So I don't want to give them a benefit of the doubt, but it goes along with how they roll. You know, when they play Monopoly, they roll a 7. This looking like a 7 to me. You know what I'm saying? This is what it looks like. It looks like they way of doing things, man. You can always look at they bullshit and point it out before. And you know, you're going to get called names for pointing it out, but they ain't going to get called names for doing it. So I'm kind of leaning toward yeah, man. I'm kind of leaning toward yeah based on that.
Mm-hmm. A couple other news happenings that took place in the past couple of days. Carl Frampton, former champion at 22 and 26, announced on social media, I want to say Instagram, that he is parting ways with his former manager, Barry McGuigan. Also, there's some issues with Canelo and the IBF vis-a-vis weigh-ins. I'll go to you, Daniel, in terms of the Frampton stuff. Is his career unraveling here right before our eyes? Because I don't understand what he's doing post his loss to Santa Cruz in the second fight.
I think personally he's been really focusing on trying to get that third fight with Santa Cruz. And yeah, probably he just feels like Barry McGuigan and now it's not going to Al Heyman in the sense, but I think that he feels like Barry McGuigan wasn't able to give him that fight that he wanted. The problem, though, is it leaves you, first of all, inactive, which is, like I said, a bad thing always. And not to mention, you're in a division that right now is a division where your stable has pretty much in charge of the belts. Yeah, you have Lee Selby. You can go to Lee Selby. The Santa Cruz Mars situation, that one has to be cleared up first because it keeps looking like that fight itself is not going to happen this year. And then you have Oscar Valdez, who is pretty much untouchable right now because he's with Top Rank. Mm-hmm. And even Gary Russell Jr. is a bearable opponent, and that may actually be a good fight. Because both of them need to have a good fight. And we'll face it, outside of Lomachenko, that'll be Gary Russell's best opponent today, if it's called Frampton. But career-wise, personality-wise, I don't quite get it as far as the guy that really, really build you up, and you're leaving him, also giving the significance of where you're from, where he's from, what it meant for Barry McGuigan to manage the next great champion from Northern Ireland. It seems to be unraveling the way, but at the same time, it's not like he himself is trying to make moves to get himself back into the picture. I think he's just, you know how some people really just they change things just for the sake of changing them. It feels like this is a situation. He's changing promoters and managers just for the sake of changing them, just hoping that it works.
I'll just open the conversation up to anybody else who wants to opine about the news surrounding Carl Frampton and him splitting ways with Barry McGuigan.
I think it's a bad move, and I think Frampton is, for some reason, he's kind of a head case right now. I mean, he did have a fight scheduled that kind of had a weird circumstances that happened, but first he didn't make weight, so that's a bad sign right there. And then next, his opponent falls in the shower and cracks his head open, fights off. People are pissed. He has a makeable fight with Selby, but you know, Daniel said it already. I mean, from what I'm hearing, Santa Cruz and Mara's fight is off. They can't come to an agreement, so it's not going to happen this year. So in a way, I kind of, you know, if Gary Russell could get that fight, I would almost favor Gary Russell in that fight, because I don't think that Frampton has it all together. I think you said it previously, Mike, is that he's slowly unraveling. I mean, these guys got him to the show and was, you know, able to get, you know, close or a decision victory against Santa Cruz, and then, you know, lose a competitive fight. But Santa Cruz definitely won that. But I mean, you can't be focused on just one thing. You got to be focused on the division itself, and I don't think he has a lot of focus. So if I was anybody else in the division, I'd be pouncing on trying to get a Frampton fight, because it seems like he has a lot of turmoil and, you know, all around him, and, you know, that's probably the best chance that you have to catch somebody on, you know, on that bad day.
Anybody else want to speak on this, or should we move on? Looks like we'll move on. I'll go back to you, Daniel. To me, before the show, I didn't know about this, but there's some issues with the IBF and Canelo, and so in terms of a second weigh-in, it seems to me that trying to do what Danny Jacobs did against Golovkin.
Yo,
go ahead.
The main thing. Well, we'll start at this. According to Boxing Scene, because this is coming from Boxing Scene, the IBF, the Rules Committee in May, they had their convention, and what they're saying is they're going to waive their second-day weigh-ins when it comes to unification fights. And what they're saying is that maybe the catalyst of this was Danny Jacobs. Because they admitted it plain as day when Danny Jacobs did what he did. He said, this was the plan. We were not planning to get that. We were not planning to come in under the mandated weigh-in. This was the plan. And in a way, I understand what the IBF is trying to do. Because obviously, we know, like Jacob mentioned, like Canelo, before, like Canelo can blow up pretty big. He's done it before. So it might be pretty hard for him just to stay at 170 for that second weigh-in. At the same time, you don't want to have a situation, I think, where you have literally the biggest actual fight, because I know people are going to throw the circus in there, but this is the biggest actual fight in the U.S. this year, and have a three-belt pretty much have a three-belt champion with only one belt actually being on the line. Because right now, Canelo's throwing this little temper tantrum with the WBC. Like, he missed a 30-day weigh-in, and he's trying to say he's not going to fight for that belt. Me and Joe Francis, we discussed the reasons. We understand it. I don't particularly fault him for it, given the circumstances. But it doesn't look like it's being resolved anytime soon. And like I said, the IBF, they just They missed the sanctioning fee from Triple G's last fight. They don't want to risk that again, especially with a fight like this. The WBA really doesn't matter to them because that Triple G's been their belt holder for a bit. So I understand why the IBF is trying to do it when it comes to unification bouts, but like I said, me and Jacob had this discussion, and he's right in the sense that weigh-in, that enforcement of the mandatories that the IBF has, both to the benefit and the chagrin of fans, is what makes the IBF look different from other sanctioning bodies. They tend to follow their own rules more than the other three. The problem, though, is it also makes, part of the reason we do this, it also makes a lot of the top-tier fighters less likely to fight for them because they know they can get away with other stuff with the other three sanctioning bodies. So it's the IBF in the way deferring or just bowing down to the other three organizations. It keeps the IBF belt now on the line for Canelo Triple G. At the same time, though, I do kind of agree that, like what Jacob said, we probably should have a lot more unified rules when it comes to the sanctioning bodies. We have rules for boxing commissions, but we don't have rules for sanctioning bodies. And things like this are going to keep popping up because this all stems from either same-day weigh-ins or what we're doing now. It's turned into a mess, but we know the other mess was there before.
Okay, I'll go to you, Joe and Francis, and then Scorsese. I hear what Daniel is saying, but I'm sorry. I'm skeptical here. I think a major part of this is Canelo exercising his power as the A side to get what he wants. Am I wrong there?
I don't think you are. Canelo, with the Mexican fan base that he has behind him, he's got a lot of power. And, the IBF, like Dan pointed out, they're usually so strict with their rules. And it surprised me the fact that they were just willing to cave, just really because of this fight. And it's because of the Danny Jacobs fight with Golovkin before. It's surprising to me that they're just willing to cave on the rules on a rule that they've enforced pretty regularly for a while now.
Scorsese and then Jacob. Unmute your mics.
Yeah, I really didn't look at it in too much depth. I just took it for what it was. They now can rehydrate like any other sanctioning body. Canelo Triple G isn't a unification bout, so it's only in unification bouts, right?
The IBF they had this rule for all their championship bouts, be it unification or not.
Yeah, now they just doing it for unification. No, they taking it out of unification bouts only, and that I guess that is a bow down to the other sanctioning bodies and try to foster unifications instead of festering unifications, I guess, and that's a good thing because certain fighters it's good for like Danny Jacobs. Now he could like I made a video saying, he should have been in the 68 tournament because he could never unify those belts because he can't be under that 10-pound rule. He just showed you that, but now they took that away from him. So if he go get
but the problem is when DeGale fought Jack, they didn't have this rule.
Yeah. I mean, it's new, so it's kind of.
And the question is, why now?
Exactly. Like I can't put my hand on either. That's something for them to answer. But personally, I don't disagree or agree with it. It's just like, hey, these guys are big. It's a lot of weight bullies in boxing. You can't avoid it. If it's anything with weight, I would change. It would just be I mean, I probably would keep it 10, 15 pounds rehydration to where you couldn't. But since everybody else isn't doing it, you know, it would mess up unification. So I gotta agree, like, fine, but yeah, it just ain't that important to me, I guess.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. This shit drives me up the wall. The way the boxing is structured, and the reason that we have weight classes is because you want a level playing field fight, right? If it didn't exist, then you would have these circus fights where you have a fucking heavyweight fighting a fucking, featherweight. It exists because that's what's going to be the most competitive fights. If somebody is way bigger and their punches aren't, they're not affected by the punches, it just seems in a way that victory is kind of empty. If these guys can't make weight, which is their job, then they need to move to another division. I understand that they want to carry power, and I understand that a lot of people do it. But at the end of the day, it's the sanctioning bodies that need to enforce these things and not let the fighters dictate how the sport is being run. But the sanctioning bodies, to another point, though, they're so greedy and they want these fees that they make these exceptions or changes to the rule. But it's very disappointing because, you have Canelo who wanted that shot at Cotto to get that lineal championship, to get the WBC, and then now he doesn't want to have nothing to do with them. I think you hit it on the head, Mike. He's just being a diva. He took that over from Cotto, and now he's the diva. And he's like, I'm bringing money, and I'm bringing the eyes to the screen, so I get to call the shots. But in a way, it's to me, it's going to be an empty victory if he gets it, and he'll look like a fool if he loses, especially if he gets knocked out, because that advantage he's trying to get. But I just really wish that there was some type of structure here to enforce these rules, because they're there for a reason. It's to, again, level the playing field, so that it's, if you're really that good in that division, your skills will take you there. You don't need to have, these other advantages. There's other things, footwork, speed, combination. There's all these other factors that you can build into a fighter that you don't need to do this weight thing. And I hate that these fighters like Danny Jacobs are missing these weigh-ins and like purposely doing it. Just be upfront about it. If you don't want to fight for the belt, or that you're not gonna make that weight, be upfront about it. I don't like that they wait till the last minute and then they don't show up and all this bullshit. But again, they're gonna be the ones that are gonna have to live with it at the end of the day. And if these sanctioning bodies keep on bending the rules, then eventually they're not going to be in control anymore. It's going to be the fighter that dictates what happens, when, where, what, and how. Which, if the fighter can have it their way, they probably would have all the advantages that they can have. So it's disappointing. I really, this fight seems to, was the biggest fight can be made on paper. And now it seems to kind of like slowly lose its luster for me.
Let's start to close things down by talking about what's happening this weekend. We all know what the big event is, the heavily hyped quote-unquote event. I'm not going to talk about that main event here because I don't care what anybody says, I think there's a farcical element to it. With that being said, there are some boxing bouts on the undercard of that main event. And I want to focus on those two bouts in particular. We're going to combine two bouts into one here. Gervonta Davis making as far as I'm concerned, it's just a voluntary defense against a guy by the name of Fonseca. Nathan Cleverly defending his title against Badou Jack. I'll go back to you, Daniel. For me, the Davis bout, this is just one of those typical voluntary bouts, as I said before, kind of easy events of easy fights, a fight that he should win against Fonseca. Cleverly, he's fighting Badou Jack. I like Badou Jack a lot as a fighter. I think Badou Jack is going to win and win pretty handily. Your thoughts?
Like I said, when it comes to Tank, I get it. Like, you're trying to make an as easy a defense as possible. After he handled his first defense pretty well against Liam Walsh, it wasn't really a fight where Liam Walsh took him to deep water. But at the same time, it kind of does show, first of all, the lack of depth that Mayweather Promotions has, and B, that they really didn't plan this circus all too well. Because, okay, you gave me the opponent Fonseca, I probably would have taken Rocky Martinez, because that was the rumored opponent for a while. I would have taken him better than do Fonseca, because at least Rocky Martinez was a former champion. Now, looking into the Badou Jack fight, the Cleverly fight, it's a fight that's been rumored. It's a fight that puts Badou Jack in a spot to get Andre Ward. And for the talk that I mentioned, like the mandatories had to get into it, and Bibble was supposed to be fighting Cleverly as a mandatory, but it works well for him because Bibble himself has said it. He's not ready. He said it. I am not ready yet for that level. I need to work on things still. So he gets a little bit of step aside money. He gets an opportunity to Jack. Jack can show that all the body punches the skill set that he has, if he can translate it to light heavyweight. Or he'll be one of those fighters that is forced to stay at a weight class because he's too weak. He may be too weak to fight at the next level up. But then he's too big for the level that he has to stay at.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Davis, that's a showcase fight. I mean, I think Daniel has talked about this before. The problem with Davis is that he doesn't really have a lot of options. There's not makeable fights for him. So, they just pick this guy. He's got a undefeated record, but if you look at his competition, he's not fighting anybody. They have like a lot of losing records. So he should roll through him pretty easily. As far as Cleverly Jack, I wasn't a big fan of Jack, but I really come around on him. He is a really good fighter, and I think that he will. Cleverly, for me, his best days are behind him. He'll put up a fight, but I think Jack, just skill wise, is just a level above him, and he got that draw in that the Gale fight, but it looked like he was going to win. I mean, he should have won that fight.
Yeah, he won that fight. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree with you, but if that fight was another round longer, it was probably going to be over for DeGale. And DeGale hasn't come back from that actually. So hopefully it'll be a decent fight and get I like activity. I like people to get activity, so it's always good to get back in there. But I expect Jack to beat him. He'll probably stop him.
I'm going back to you, Jacob, talk about these other two fights, which you're going to be live at. You're going to be in attendance. You're going to be in the building. Miguel Cotto, and what he says will be his last year in boxing. He's going to face off against Kamegai on the undercard of that. Ray Vargas, a guy who I was really impressed by in his title-winning win over in the UK to win the WBC belt at 122. Fighting a guy by the name of Ronny Rios. I had a brain freeze. I'm sorry for that. But since you're going to be in the building, your thoughts on those fights?
I will be there. Not in a building. It'll be outside. It's an outdoor arena. Beautiful place.
Technically, yeah, outdoors. So,
yeah. But I don't know why. I have a feeling Kamegai is going to beat Cotto. I'm calling an upset. I am calling an upset here. I think Cotto, you know, he's a good fighter, but he can be hurt. He definitely can be hurt. And he's had to, you know, go past, you know, suffer adversity, and you know, sometimes he comes out on top, sometimes he doesn't. But Kamegai, you know, he's gonna come and he's gonna bring the fight, and I think, I don't know, I just have a feeling he's gonna upset him. He's gonna hurt Cotto and maybe the later part of the fight, and you know, possibly stop him, or something's gonna happen. But
Oh wow!
you know, so I don't know. That's my bold prediction. But hopefully, I mean, I think it'll be a good fight. You know, Kamegai is not afraid to get in there and bang. I saw him before. I've seen him a couple times before. You know, with Guerrero, and that was a really good, you know, just a good scrap. And I can't remember the other guy he fought before. He ended up losing. But I agree with you on the Vargas fight, though. I think, you know, Vargas, to me, has looked impressive. You know, his win over McDonald was a good one, and Ronny Rios, I believe, was kind of like a highly touted guy in the Golden Boy stable, but he had a little, you know, he had a loss to Castellanos, who had just fought, what's his name, Corrales.
Corrales, yeah.
Yeah, and Castellanos is like the upset, you know, spoiler guy, you know. So, you know, he was on a pretty hot streak and being, you know, featured. But I think Vargas is just a better fighter, and it's for a title, WBC World Super Bantamweight title. So, you know, hopefully both bring it, and hopefully they put on an exciting match. But going Kamegai Vargas.
Going to you, Daniel. I co-sign what Jacob was saying about Vargas. I think Vargas is just too tall, too big, too long, too skilled for Ronny Rios. And you can hit Ronny Rios and Vargas. From what I've seen, he has the skill set to hit him and hit him a lot. And I just don't know how Rios is going to thwart the physical advantages that Ray Vargas brings to the table. Cotto, Kamegai, do you agree with Jacob here? Are you smelling upset?
That's tricky. That's a tricky fight to estimate because of the implications that supposedly Cotto had when he signed with Golden Boy. Because if I remember correctly, he was supposed to win this fight and then have his last fight, should he win, be at 160 pounds against David Lemieux. I think it's supposedly the only way that HBO agreed to it, even show this fight. But the thing with Cotto is, you hear from interviews like our good old friend Gail Farkenthal. She was in a conference call, I think earlier today, with Cotto, and he does seem, I think, at peace with the fact that his career is going to be over at the end of the year. So yeah, I could definitely see an upset for Kamegai, because say what you want about Kamegai, he is a very good fighter. His work rate is exceptional, and you have to give him to the fact, like I said, like Japanese fighters over there, he has that spirit of Bushido. You have to kill him to stop him. And if you have that going for you, and then your opponent is pretty much at peace with the decisions that he's making, yeah, I could definitely smell an upset with Kamegai, because, well, they said, to put it bluntly, Kamegai has more to lose. And as far as Ray Vargas, yeah, that kid's impressive. The way he won his title was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And I do not see, like, Ronny Rios being able to, same thing, take away that height, take away that reach, take away all that Ray Vargas has that he can use against Ronny Rios. And it's a good event. And yeah, I'm agreeing with you guys. I could see Yoshihiro Kamegai winning this fight.
Well, I had said I think Cotto will win. He may have some trouble along the way, but I just think he will find some way to get the decision in this bout, some way, somehow, even if he doesn't really deserve it. I just think he's going to get the win. I just think that Vargas, I just think he's going to make relative easy work of Ronny Rios, and I think we're going to end the show on that note. First and foremost, I want to thank Francis and Joe from 4Boxing for joining us. If you want to check them out and talk the sweet science, you can check them out on Twitter. 4Boxing News at 4Boxing News, all one word, the number 4, BOXINGNEWS at 4Boxing News. I want to thank Zaire. Had a bit of a family emergency, so he had to step away. If you want to talk boxing with him, talk boxing or gaming, he has an excellent gaming channel, by the way. On Twitter at Zaire2005, ZAIRE2005. You want to check him out there on Twitter, talking boxing or gaming. Scorsese was also here. I think he had to dip out as well. If you want to talk boxing with him, you can check him out on Twitter at MyLowPlace, MYLOWPLACE, and you can also check him out on Twitter. On YouTube and G+. Low Place, #MLPF. Check him out on Twitter. He has a boxing page on YouTube, I should say, on YouTube and G+. Going to you, Jacob from Jab Hook, for folks who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies, let the people know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for having me on the show. Shout out to the show, like always. Write a review, subscribe, tell your friends. It's a good show. A lot of different people come on, and a lot of different opinions, and people know their stuff. And then, of course, shout out to Gail. I'll see her this weekend at the fight. She always goes to the local fight, so we got that fight in Superfly coming up, which I'm fucking excited for. I can't wait till that fight. But you can hit me up on Twitter, JRATM23. And if you want to talk boxing or movies, that's pretty much all I talk about. I'll do a little plug for a buddy of mine, James Hancock, on his show Wrong Reel, and also which you can get on iTunes or any other platform. And also a guy that I actually guested on a show that's upcoming, Martin Kessler for Flixwise Canada, which you can find also on iTunes.
And for those, I'll go to you, Daniel. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk NBA, specifically the Miami Heat, for those who want to see you clap back at fools on Twitter, let them know where they can hit you up.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99. I write for the Inscriber Digital Magazine. Like I said, also I have my own show with Joe and Francis, who were here earlier this evening for BoxingNews.com. We're going to have it on this Thursday. And yeah, I'm pretty much having the same policy here. I will acknowledge the circus. I will talk about the bullshit that surrounded the circus. I will not actually focus on the three-ring circus, though.
For those who want to talk the sweet science or music or fitness, online fitness coach now Beachbody. The links are on the pound for pound site. For those who want to talk about any of those things with me, you know what it is, Brother JR, on Twitter at BrotherJR76, as I said to begin the show. If you want to find out all things Pound for Pound Boxing Report, please check out the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Look to the right, links to the pages / channels on G+, YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter. Also, links to where to listen to the show on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Player FM, SoundCloud, and Mixcloud. Contemplating whether I will do a show next week because been doing a lot of shows back to back. I hadn't done Pound for Pound Boxing at this rate. 4 shows in about a week span. And because there's not much boxing happening after this weekend for the next couple of weeks until the Superfly, I may take a week off and just reconvene the week of Superfly to talk about Chocolatito, RSSR2, Anui making his U.S. debut. Gallo Estrada, Quadras, as well as Talk David Benavidez, who's fighting for the vacant super middleweight title. I'll let you know. But for Joe and Francis, for Francis and Joe of 4 Boxing News, for Zaire of Next Gen, Scorsese, for Jacob, for Daniel, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 181 of Pound for Pound Box Report. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Night.